Coming up on the National Rundown, news of Syria's ceasefire agreement, earthquakes happening in Mexico and on the Pacific coast, and a look at this week's weather.
Tú no eres un superhéroe. Visita al doctor regularmente aun cuando te sientes bien. Así podrás seguir cuidando a los que sí te ven como un superhéroe. Para más información, visita ahrq.gov.
Good evening and welcome to the Rowan National Rundown. I'm Ashley Tradio. George Zimmerman, the lead suspect in the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, faces the charge of second-degree murder. Zimmerman came out of hiding yesterday after hearing he was going to be charged for the February 26 shooting. Zimmerman states he killed Martin for self-defense. Martin's family is simply satisfied that Zimmerman is finally in custody. There is now a ceasefire in Syria. Danielle Nottingham has more with the story.
Soldiers patrol the Syrian border where a fragile ceasefire appears to have taken hold between government troops and rebels. The UN-brokered deal calls for forces loyal to the Syrian regime to stop widespread attacks on opposition fighters. If that truce holds, international observers will move in, and talks will begin between the rebels and the government of Bashar Assad. But opponents say government troops are still deployed across the country ready to fight.
There has been an increase, a big increase in the number of checkpoints, and those checkpoints are heavily armed.
Assad's regime launched a bloody crackdown 13 months ago on protesters who wanted him to step down. The White House is watching the ceasefire closely, but is not ready to say it's a sign of progress in Syria.
The Assad regime has so far failed to comply with key obligations. The regime's troops and tanks have not pulled back from population centers, and it remains to be seen if the regime will keep its pledge to permit peaceful demonstrations.
The U.S. and its allies insist there are no plans to launch military strikes on Syria like they did in Libya to end Muammar Gaddafi's rule. Human rights groups hope the truce can finally lead to an end to this conflict, which has already killed at least 9,000 people. Danielle Nottingham, CBS News, the White House.
Democratic strategist Hillary Rosen creates critics. Her lavish statement that Ann Romney, wife of Mitt Romney, has, quote, actually never worked a day in her life, end quote, has stirred up some controversy through Twitter. Ann Romney and even President Obama took to Twitter to separate the campaign from the comments. After Rick Santorum's withdrawal, it's time for Mitt Romney to start thinking about being president and how many women appreciate him. According to the Washington Post, Obama has the support of 57% of women, while Romney is supported by 38% of females. Jury selection is currently underway in the trial of former Democratic presidential candidate John Edwards. Edwards is being charged with 6 felony and misdemeanor counts from money dealings from the 2008 campaign. Edwards is accused of conspiracy, issuing false statements, and violating campaign contribution laws. Connecticut Governor Daniel Malloy says he will sign a bill abolishing the death penalty. The House of Representatives in Connecticut passed the bill by a vote of 86 to 63. Connecticut will become the 17th state to abandon capital punishment. Connecticut lawmakers tried to accomplish this in 2009 but failed to do so. Support for the war in Afghanistan drops to a record low. An ABC News Washington Post poll shows that 2/3 of Americans now say that the war in Afghanistan has not been worth fighting. The drop in support corresponds to an increase in the belief that Afghans themselves do not support the U.S. effort. Fire damages a home in Camden County. A house in Lindenwold went up in flames early Thursday morning. The house is owned by a firefighter who had just finished his shift and took his dog out for a walk. When he returned home, his house was on fire. There were no reports of injuries. A 21-year-old man has been charged in a pair of sexual assaults, according to police. Han Gabry of Revere Way in Percy has been charged with indecent assault of unconscious person. statutory sexual assault, and several other offenses stemming from 2 incidences. The incidences occurred in the spring of 2010. As of today, Joe Muto is not working for Fox News Channel. Muto was fired today after the network found out that he was leaking Gawker's new Fox Mole yesterday. The Fox Mole is an anonymous columnist for the news and gossip site. Muto was originally suspended today and was later fired according to a press release. Coming up after the break, Erin Haskell has the latest news from a popular author in the Entertainment Report, and find out what Andrea Herdman has to say about where you should keep your toothbrush. Stay tuned.
$12.99. Call them.
Sherry Pearson. You are the sole surviving heir of the King of Montanopolis, and you are now worth $45 million.
I'm rich! This can't be real.
Of course it's not real. Come on. Having money isn't about luck. Like that takeout meal. Cook at home instead, you can save thousands a year. Feed me. Feed the pig.
A drunk driver who hit and injured a 9-year-old boy from Bucks County after a Phillies-Giants game last summer in San Francisco is sentenced. Andrew Vargas will serve 1 year in prison, 5 years probation, go through a 9-month DUI program, and do community service. The boy, Ryan White, suffered a brain injury, a broken pelvis, ankle, and leg, as well as internal injuries. Which popular author is releasing a new book? Erin Haskell will tell you.
Thank you, Ashley. Get ready, J.K. Rowling fans. The Harry Potter author releases the details of her new adult novel. The book, titled The Casual Vacancy, centers around the sudden death of a man in a small English town and how the other small-town residents react. The 480-page novel will be available worldwide on September 27th. Guns N' Roses singer Axl Rose declines to attend his induction with the rest of the rock group into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rose replied, quote, "No offense meant to anyone, but the Hall of Fame induction ceremony doesn't appear to be somewhere I'm actually wanted or respected," end quote. The Hall says it still plans to induct Rose with the rest of the group members, who will be attending the ceremony on Saturday. Mark Anthony officially files for divorce from his wife of 7 years, Jennifer Lopez, on Monday, citing irreconcilable differences. The couple announced their separation in June of last year. Anthony is seeking joint custody of their 4-year-old twins, Max and Emmy. Back to you at the desk.
Now here's Andrea Herdman to talk with us about germs and household items.
Hi, Ashley. So yes, these are things, your average everyday household needs that are bacteria-ridden.
And what are the items that can make you sick?
Well, for one, there's the vacuum cleaner. It has the most germs. It picks up all the germs off the floor, including molds and E. coli. The others include the dishwasher, washing machine, a sponge, and even your toothbrush.
Toothbrush, what can you do about that?
Well, when you leave your toothbrush sitting out, the bristles collect bacteria and then tack on all the 500 plus bacteria in your mouth already. That's how it starts.
Wow, so nobody wants that. How can you prevent yourself from that happening?
You're gonna wanna soak your toothbrush for about 20 minutes in mouthwash, or even regularly running it through a clean dishwasher. Even more simply, just concealing it, keeping it in your cabinet.
Okay, what about other items besides toothbrushes?
For the dishwasher and the washing machine, you're gonna wanna run them through regularly with bleach. And for the sponge, experts say the best way is to throw the wet sponge in the microwave on high for a minute.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. Thank you so much, Andrea.
No problem.
Now let's turn to Stephen for World News Minute.
Thank you, Ashley. 2 large earthquakes rattled Mexico and the Pacific coast. The first quake, a 6.5, struck about 42 miles northwest of Lázaro Cárdenas in the Michoacán region at 3:55 p.m. Pacific Time Wednesday. The second quake, a 6.9, struck in the Gulf of California at 12:15 a.m. Pacific Time Thursday. Beds moved and ceiling fans shook in the Gulf, while buildings swayed in Mexico City, but no significant damage was reported. The dispute between China and the Philippines escalates as both sides deploy more warships. Philippine warships attempted to arrest the crews of a Chinese fishing fleet that had entered the Scarborough Shoal off the northwestern Philippines. Coming to the rescue of the fishing vessels were 2 Chinese surveillance ships. Arguing that it is Philippine territory, the small island country of Philippines has since sent out a second warship to the area. Neither side shows any signs of standing down. And finally, Syrian refugees went to extreme lengths to escape their home country Thursday. For hours, families and individuals crawled through a hole in a barbed wire fence marking the border between Syria and Turkey. That morning, a ceasefire in the fighting seemed to be working. However, many are skeptical that it will last. That's the World News Minute. I'm Stephen Shader. Back to you at the desk.
A New York woman is facing multiple fraud and larceny charges for allegedly pretending she had terminal cancer. Jessica Vega, 25, who was arrested last week in Virginia and later brought to New York, has been indicted on fraud and grand larceny charges and one misdemeanor in the alleged ruse. She faked the illness to get thousands of dollars from sympathetic donors to pay for an over-the-top wedding and honeymoon. She could face up to 24 years behind bars if convicted. CEOs of major corporations have a negative image based on greed and money, but CEO Dan Porter of the social design company OMG Pop is going against the stereotype. The game Draw Something quickly became the most popular game on iPhone and Android when it was sold for $210 million. Porter hired backfired employees to share the new wealth. Now let's turn to Michelle to find out more about that comeback victory by the Flyers.
Thanks, Ashley. And the Flyers take Game 1. The Philadelphia Flyers came from behind to defeat the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime 4-3 last night in Pittsburgh. Jake Voracek scored the final goal in just 2 minutes and 23 seconds into overtime. Game 2 is tomorrow night at 7:30. Ozzie Guillen puts his foot in his mouth yet again. The Miami Marlins manager has been suspended for 5 games after comments he made to Time magazine, which portrayed Cuban leader Fidel Castro in a positive light. Many from the Cuban-American community are calling for his resignation. And Bobby Petrino is out. The Arkansas football coach has been fired after he tried to conceal an inappropriate relationship with a recently hired employee. Petrino also gave employee Jessica Durrell $20,000 out of his own pocket as a gift. Back to you at the desk.
How much will this weather warm up? Jacqueline Zielinski has your weather forecast.
I'm Jacqueline Zielinski, and now let's take a look at your forecast for today. Today it was 55 and cloudy with a low, and tonight's low will be 40 degrees. Now let's take a look at the 5-day forecast. It's going to be beautiful this weekend. Friday is going to be sunny with a high of 66 and a low of 44. Saturday is going to be sunny, high of 72 and low of 58, perfect for prop stock. Sunday is going to be partly sunny, high of 81 and a low of 59. Monday, partly sunny again, high of 81, low of 60. And Tuesday will be partly sunny, high of 78 and a low of 60. Now let's take a look at today's weather window. As you can see in today's weather window, it's outside of Robinson Hall and the Science Hall, and it was cloudy today, but it's about to warm up.
And what are you going to do with the warm weather?
Well, there's prop stock this weekend. Are you attending?
I think so. I'm hoping to. I have to get my ticket.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the 80s, and I'm so excited. Spring is finally here.
Yes,
summer is close. I'm excited.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all for this week's Rowan National News. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.